Hi guys, so I tried to think of some elegant or professional way to start this video, but there isn't one. So let's dive right in, straight from the horse's mouth.
Nation shall rise up against nation, and as we see these things increase in intensity and frequency, we can know that the Lord is going to return.
We don't want peace, we being evangelicals, we want Armageddon. Bring it on.
That's Robert Jeffress, a Christian Zionist, televangelist, and the senior pastor in the First Baptist megachurch in Dallas, Texas. Oh yeah, and he's Trump's spiritual advisor. So this guy's in Trump's ear. Let that sink in. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. This is bat crazy. It's religious extremism, and in my opinion, evangelicalism is a cult. Now, before you come at me in the comments for not being respectful to a religion, let me clarify. Religion is about deference to God. Cultism is about deference to the leader. I have no respect for cults, and I have even less respect for anti-American Zionist cult leaders that use God to dupe good but gullible people into supporting Israel's genocide. As a Catholic, I can publicly say that pederast priests should be thrown out and prosecuted, and that the church's credibility won't improve until they are. I can criticize the Pope for not doing anything about this. I can even campaign with other Catholics for it. None of this would get me excommunicated because Catholicism is a religion. It doesn't quash dissent. But try that in a Christian Zionist evangelical church and see what happens. I use images from a documentary titled Praying for Armageddon, produced by Al Jazeera, that you absolutely must watch. I've linked both episodes below. And before you discredit the film because you don't like the producer, I'll remind you that the truth is the truth no matter who says it. Water isn't any less wet just because, I don't know, George Soros says it is. Evangelists might not match with the cult trope of desert bunkers and groups that operate in the shadows until they make the news when something really tragic happens. But it does fulfill the 5 markers used to identify all cults, and I'll show you how one by one. Now, televangelists are notorious for their theatrics, corruption, and mega wealth. John Hagee reportedly has a net worth of about $5 million. Jeffress is around the same. Peddling salvation is a good gig, if you can get it. Maybe they are true believers, or maybe they're just cashing in. And if you want to follow them, have at it. Honestly, I couldn't care less what people do in their private lives. You want your mind controlled by lunatics? Go ahead. You want to make them rich? Be my guest. Just stay in your lane. Because when you cross into mine and use your money and leverage to influence my government to create policies that harm me and my country, then we have a problem. The amount of influence, money, and power that evangelical organizations like Christians United for Israel wield in DC is alarming. First, because of their insane objectives. These people want to facilitate the death and destruction of Armageddon. They look forward to a final cataclysmic end to the world because they believe they'll be raptured up to heaven and spared from the suffering that they've caused. Because according to them, that's God's will.
The end of time. When is that? That's right now. The next thing that's about to happen is the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. Everything that's necessary for this new world order is at the door. You are a soldier of the cross. We are conquerors in Jesus' name. The victory is ours. Advance and conquer.
Father, I just ask that we will be more militant about serving you. We will be more militant, Father, about saying yes to the things that's yes and no to the things that is no.
This is their stated goal. But it's not the goal of normal, healthy Americans who want peace, who want their families to prosper, who want to be safe to enjoy their freedoms. People who don't believe that the death of millions is a prerequisite for their own salvation. This is the first problem. The second is that this cult has the money and influence to leverage this administration to do its bidding. That means that the people in control of the US today are kowtowing to groups whose aims are in direct opposition to American interests. They can make it happen, and have. I'll show you. The third issue is that the tax exemptions that these groups enjoy restrict them to, quote, religious, educational, or charitable activities only. But Zionism is a political movement. not a religious one. So when they lobby for the Zionist agenda, they're politically lobbying for a foreign entity. Just like AIPAC, this violates their Internal Revenue Code. And again, just like AIPAC, they're allowed to, without registering with FARA. Why? Ironically, Israel registered with FARA on September 27th to target American evangelicals. So if you're an evangelical, you're being exposed to copious amounts of propaganda. Another problem is the belief that America was built on Judeo-Christian values. Judeo-Christian is a term that was made up in 1820s America to describe Jews that converted to Christianity. That's it. America was founded on Christian values, but in 1700s America, Christianity looked like this. And now it looks like this. Get it? The false dichotomy that you're either pro-Zionist or pro-Islamist is a logical fallacy. Being pro-American has nothing to do with any other country but your own. So stop falling for this nonsense because it's silly. Like I said, there are many evangelical organizations operating under the same agenda. But since CUFI is the largest, I'll use it as an example to show you how it checks off every major cult indicator and the power it wields in Washington, so that you can answer the question for yourself. Are evangelicals a dangerous cult with disturbing influence over the US government? Whether you're religious or not, if you're an American, this concerns you. We are a nation of laws. The separation of church and state is paramount to maintaining these laws for the benefit of our own citizens and for applying them justly to all. There's good reason why we aren't a theocracy. So when any religious organization has a main line into the White House, you have the right to know what's going on behind their pulpits, tax exemptions, and glossy PR stunts. Let's get into it. Sociologists and psychologists have a checklist of 5 recurring tactics used in all cults to recruit, control, and extract value from people for a specific agenda. So let's go down the list and see how CUFI fits the bill. Number 1, charismatic and centralized leadership. A central figure with near absolute authority who dominates doctrine and decision-making. This authority figure is revered, supported, and never questioned. John Hagee is the founder and public face of CUFI, as well as John Hagee Ministries, the outreach arm of the Hagee Empire, and run by Hagee and his son, Matt Hagee. His daughter, Sandra Hagee Parker, is the chairwoman of CUFI's Action Fund. His wife, Diana Castro Hagee, is the chief of staff of John Hagee Ministries and the co-executive director of CUFI. And the rest of the leadership is centralized, with Hagee and his associated family in the most senior roles. That concentration of power, a founder and his family in control, is a classic red flag. Who signs grants? Who appoints executives? Who the hell knows? Number 2, social environment and information control. The group controls members' sources of information and its social environment. Their books are the only books that are relevant. Their interpretations are the only ones that are correct. There is no discussion or debate about anything. You either agree with everything they say without question, or you're labeled an enemy. When lobbying for the CHI Act, Countering Hate Against Israel by Federal Contractors Act, yeah, that's a real thing. Sandra Hagee Parker claimed, quote, no government contracts for Israel haters. So let me get this straight. If you're an American who prefers a free market where the government can't compel you to do business, then you're an Israel hater. And if you're an Israel hater, well, then you're not an evangelical. And if you're not an evangelical, then how will you be saved? Which brings me to number 3, manipulation of beliefs and identity. Using fear, guilt, and apocalyptic narrative to create unwavering loyalty. End times is a very popular theme in cults. Every major cult has had some version of this rhetoric, and all have promised that salvation will only come to those who remain members of the group. Hagee's brand of Christian Zionism puts Israel at the center of eschatology, the cryptic revelations about a sudden, dramatic, and cataclysmic intervention by God, the judgment of all men, and the rule of the elect with God in a renewed heaven and earth. Hagee's messages equating political support for Israel with spiritual duty have been repeatedly broadcast in sermons and CUFI messaging.
Few Christians understand that in the future there's going to be a global day of judgment in which the nations of the world and individuals will be judged by Jesus Christ on planet Earth for how they treated the Jewish people. That's a synopsis of Matthew, the 24th chapter. Jesus Christ is going to gather the nations of the world, and he's going to ask them about how they treated the Jewish people. Because there's going to come a day that God is going to evaluate the world based on his blessing his people or their chastisement of his people. And I assure you, the anti-Semites are going to have a day of judgment. The demonic poison of anti-Semitism has taken root in the U.S. Congress. It's there right now. The judgment of God is going to come to America if we do not eradicate the plague of anti-Semitism that's in our government. I want to have a message with you to the House of Representatives. We sent you to Congress to stand up and to stiffen up your spine. Rebuke these anti-Semites socially, publicly.
Equating criticism and opposition of the group to opposing God means using theology to suppress dissent. This is classic mind control. Number 4, financial exploitation and the lack of transparency. Members become human ATMs, asked to donate to, quote, spread the message. The problem is that there's little to no independent audits or public accounting. Members have no idea who the group's donors are or how their money is being spent. And there are many clever ways to hide a paper trail. Both CUFI and John Hagee Ministries' public materials boast massive fundraising and Night to Honor Israel totals, claiming significant multi-million-dollar impact. But there's a transparency gap. The lobbying arm of CUFI, the Action Fund, files Form 990s and reports revenue and assets publicly. But John Hagee Ministries and the Cornerstone Church, the mothership ministries, do not. Why? Because churches aren't required to. Do you see it yet? Watchdogs have long flagged this lack of disclosure because this mismatch, one arm public and one arm opaque, is the perfect setup for financial exploitation and the potential misdirection of funds. For example, the press reported CUFI's donations to Israeli organization Im Tirtzu, a large grassroots Zionist NGO. Its mission? To strengthen and promote Zionist values and build a Zionist elite for future leadership. From 2008 to 2010, it's reported that CUFI JHM donated at least $300,000 to Im Tirtzu, and that tens of millions were given by Hagee-linked foundations to Israeli causes over the years. Now, to be clear, these are public, citable receipts, but more recent 990s for the visible lobbying arm show no Schedule F foreign grant activity from 2021 to 2023. So either A, donations are routed through non-filing church entities, B, intermediaries carry funds and show them on their own 990s, or C, donations stopped altogether. The only way to know for sure would be to subpoena bank wires, donor ledgers, and Schedule F pages from all affiliated companies. Now, this isn't proof of money laundering. I never said that. But it is proof that historically large transfers that suddenly stop, combined with a lack of transparency, justifies forensic subpoenas. Just saying. Number 5, isolation from criticism. Dissent is delegitimized. Outsiders are enemies. Basically, everyone else is wrong and only the group knows the truth. Any criticism is simply waved off as ignorance, stupidity, or not being spiritually evolved enough to understand the group's message. CUFI frames criticism and dissent as hostile, anti-Israel, and anti-Semitic, and critics have been publicly labeled and marginalized. This type of culture of ostracism and backlash discourages whistleblowing from within the organization and creates the hive mentality. Classic cult behavior that has real and dire consequences when combined with financial opacity and political influence. To be clear, these 5 markers, charismatic and centralized leadership, social environment and information control, manipulation of beliefs and identity, Financial exploitation and lack of transparency and isolation from criticism are standard across all case studies, Jonestown, NXIVM, and other cults. So, how does CUFI leverage its power to influence U.S. policy? The Taylor Force Act of 2018. CUFI was involved in that. Anti-BDS state laws. CUFI was involved in those. Now, for the record, these laws are unconstitutional. If the government can tell you who to do business with, then your opinions no longer matter, and we no longer have a free market. And the Supreme Court agrees with me. In 2012, a Masterpiece cake shop refused to create a wedding cake for a same-sex couple. The couple filed a lawsuit through the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the baker, citing his religious objection and First Amendment rights. Funny how soon we forget. Trump's Jerusalem embassy recognition and embassy move in 2017. CUFI was involved in that. How this came about is bonkers. Hagee met with Trump and urged him to do what no other president had ever done because, according to Hagee, it would coincide with Israel's 70-year anniversary and fulfill biblical prophecy, which again is an insane argument to make when you're talking foreign policy and its many, many real-world ramifications. But men with weak egos thrive on accolades, praise, and compliments to maintain a sense of self. So, how was Trump recognized for being such a good boy? Israel put his face on a coin, alongside King Cyrus, who in the Bible is referred to as, quote, the Messiah appointed by God to rebuild Jerusalem and its temple. There are even huge billboards up throughout Israel with Trump's picture on it, claiming that Cyrus is back. I mean, can you imagine how fulfilling it is for Trump to see himself on a literal coin? He'd never get that type of recognition here in America. At least not now. But even if he had, what's a coin compared to being considered a king? A literal messiah. That's next level. Trump's a Gemini, and if you know anything about Geminis, you know that they're fair weather friends. Sure, they're fun at parties and great at PR, but loyalty, not their strongest trait. Loyalty to themselves, yes. They'll always side with whoever strokes their egos best. Just don't count on them sticking to their promises. Don't get mad at me, I love you guys, but you know it's the truth. Recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, 2019. CUFI was involved. Executive order adopting IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in 2019 and later EO activity in 2025. Again, CUFI was involved in that. IHRA was arguably one of the most dangerous violations of First Amendment rights that would have made it illegal to even criticize Israel in the United States. So you could criticize your own government, you just couldn't criticize them. Thankfully, it didn't pass the Senate, but the fact that it was even brought up is disturbing. CUFI strongly supported these orders and the later attempt to expand upon it. Its public praise and mobilization clearly show its influence even if a single actor didn't write the EO. I could go on. CUFI was heavily involved in both Ben & Jerry's boycott reversal and the 21st Century Peace Through Strength Act of 2024, which handed over $14.3 billion to Israel. That's not to mention its annual Washington Summit that gives CUFI direct access to high-level officials and its involvement drafting and promoting state bills. Open Secrets lobbying records document formal lobbying expenditures by CUFI in the hundreds of thousands in recent years. And CUFI has a very long list of friends in power. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, Marco Rubio, John Cornyn, Joni Ernst, Tim Scott, Mike Johnson, Claudia Tenney, and Mike Lawler. Obviously, this is just a short list of known U.S. reps associated with CUFI, but it doesn't include its connections to Israeli officials and other U.S. administration figures. CUFI is one of the most active Christian Zionist lobbying groups in the U.S. today, tying spiritual duty to political action. Its tax exemption status restricts its activity to religious, educational, or charitable works. It looks like they've crossed that line many times over. So then, why are they still tax exempt? Why don't they have to register with FARA? Because U.S. churches and religious ministries get broad deference. In my opinion, much too broad. They're rarely required to file Form 990s, and the IRS avoids auditing religious organizations. They probably don't want to deal with the backlash. And who can blame them? 501c3 status allows charitable and religious activity, including some foreign charitable donations, as long as it's presented as educational or humanitarian. 501c4 arms can lobby. CUFI uses a dual entity structure, C3 for donor and tax advantages, and C4 for advocacy. It's legal in principle because the law focuses on intent and use of funds, but it doesn't look like CUFI is hiding what its intents are. And again, it looks like they have very publicly violated those terms. I could be wrong, but I think there's only one logical conclusion as to why the DOJ isn't looking into CUFI and compelling it to hand over its bank records, grant contracts, emails, and donor instructions. Corruption. All of this sounds super crazy, and I understand, especially if you're not a religious person. So what attracts people to cults, and what keeps them under a cult control? Let's break these down into two parts. Core biological and neurological mechanisms, which are the brain level reasons, and psychological and social vulnerabilities, which are the mind and life conditions that recruit people. Part 1. Core neurological mechanisms. Reward and dopamine learning. Our brains release dopamine when we get rewards, like praise, attention, a feeling of belonging, or a thrill. Dopamine reinforces behavior because we're wired to repeat what felt good in the past. Cults hack into this by showering praise, rituals, attention, and insider status to create positive feedback loops. Small wins create bigger commitment, and that creates a deeper loyalty. Repeated social rewards lead people to associate the group with emotional highs. Leaving means losing that reward. Oxytocin and social bonding. Oxytocin, which is both a hormone and a neurotransmitter, helps people bond, trust, and feel attachment to others. Cults use rituals, shared tears, group singing, and synchronized activity to boost oxytocin, making members feel closer than family. This strong biochemical bonding reduces skepticism and increases the individual's willingness to sacrifice. Stress, cortisol, and reduced critical thinking. Chronic stress floods the brain with cortisol. High cortisol narrows attention and weakens reflective thought, a function of the prefrontal cortex. Cult recruiters often exploit crises like divorce, job loss, anxiety about viruses, wars, or social disruptions, because when people are stressed, they're more likely to accept simplified narratives and strong leaders. When under stress, most people prefer quick answers and authoritarian certainty. Nuanced, skeptical reasoning is rejected. In other words, they want answers now, even if they're the wrong answers. Social pain overlaps with physical pain. The brain processes social rejection very similar to the way it processes physical pain. And for some, it actually hurts. Cults exploit this by threatening ostracism. For example, if you leave, you'll be alone, damned, and/or shamed. The fear of emotional pain keeps some people compliant. In fact, fear of social pain is often stronger than fear of rational harm, like financial loss and exploitation. Mirror neurons and social mimicry. Humans unconsciously mimic the facial expressions, postures, and speech patterns of the people they're around. In cults, intensive prolonged exposure to charismatic leaders or in-group members causes mimicry and identification. I'm like them, so I must be one of them. And vice versa. Manipulators will mimic you, your mannerisms, the way you're standing, and your opinions when dealing with you. This instantly makes you more open to them, and this mimicry accelerates identity fusion with the group. Prefrontal cortex versus limbic system dynamics. The prefrontal cortex is the brain's slow thinking control center. This is where logic, reason, and inhibition lie, while the limbic system runs fast feelings, responses like fight or flight. Cults exploit this with high emotion events, sleep deprivation, or information overload that reduce prefrontal control, letting emotional messaging dominate decisions. People shift from careful evaluation to gut-driven obedience when the prefrontal cortex is impaired. Cognitive reinforcement and neural pathways. Repeated thoughts and behaviors strengthen neural pathways. Like the saying goes, neurons that fire together wire together. Daily rituals, mantras, and repetitive lessons make the cult worldview automatic. Once a cognitive pathway is entrenched, it's harder to replace with new information. Now let's talk about the psychological and social vulnerabilities. Number 1, identity instability, identity searching. People who are in transitional life stages, like teens to adults, or a midlife crisis, or leaving a religion or a relationship are searching for identity and meaning, and groups that offer clear identity slots are attractive. Number 2, loneliness and social isolation. Lack of close friends or belonging is one of the strongest predictors of joining tightly bonded groups. Studies show that most humans will trade autonomy for connection. Number 3, trauma and unresolved grief. Trauma creates openings. People seek safety, absolution, or someone to explain their pain to them. Cults offer narratives like blame, meaning, and redemption that feel healing. Number 4, need for certainty and cognitive closure. Individuals who strongly prefer answers and dislike ambiguity are drawn to rigid ideologies with a black and white worldview. Number 5, low social capital and economic insecurity. Financial stress, precarious employment, or lack of community resources pushes people toward groups that promise support, like housing, jobs, and community. Number 6, high suggestibility and social conformity tendencies. Personality traits like high agreeableness or suggestibility make someone more likely to accept persuasive leaders and peer pressure. Number 7, authoritarian submission tendencies. Some people have a psychological style favoring deference to strong leaders, traits often shaped by their upbringing or cultural norms. Number 8, cognitive biases that aid recruitment. These biases are already in your brain, and all a cult has to do is tap into them to gain your trust. Confirmation bias, favoring information that confirms your pre-existing beliefs. Authority bias, trusting what an authority says, even if it's contradictory. Availability heuristic. Recent emotional stories seem much more probable, and recruiters use vivid anecdotes to convince potential members to join. Sunk cost fallacy. The more someone invests time and money into the cult, the more they justify staying. Number 9, ideological or moral absolutism. Recruits are offered very simple moral frameworks and told the world is a battle of good versus evil. Number 10, group identity and identity fusion. When personal identity fuses with group identity, self-sacrifice for the group becomes attractive and rationalized. The bottom line is that a person who's never stood on their own 2 feet, without friends, family, or a romantic partner to support them emotionally, physically, or financially, is a lot more likely to submit to manipulation. Why? Because they lack the self-confidence and self-respect that come from autonomy, from knowing who you are, what you want, and most importantly, being comfortable depending on yourself and living true to your own values, knowing that you can succeed and be at peace without anyone else's permission, validation, or company to feel complete. If the ambiguity of life frightens you, if the thought of being alone makes you scared, you'll always be at the mercy of someone else's intentions. In any type of relationship, the one who can walk away has full autonomy, and the other one has to submit to whatever comes. Don't let this be you. If you want help overcoming this, grab a copy of my book, Reframe It, in the link below, and start turning things around. If you guys want me to dig deeper into cult tactics, a practical checklist of signs to look out for, and how to prevent or stop the manipulation, let me know in the comments and I'll make a follow-up vid. Look, I get it. Fear makes people do weird things, but honestly, does any of this look normal to you? If you need some guy's fiery rhetoric to give your life purpose, like I said, go ahead. There are plenty of people who need the same thing. But let's stop pretending that this...
We're going to see a time where we're going to have to defend the Christian life with a sword. We're going to have a bloodbath like we've never witnessed since the Civil War. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I knight you.
Is any more than cosplay. And you know what is so strange to me that I just cannot reconcile in my mind is that while Christian Zionists are championing Israel, Israel is bombing Christian churches in Gaza. And Christian pilgrims that go to Israel are often met by Israeli Jews who are spitting on them and yelling at them to leave.
Ultra-Orthodox Jews spit toward Christians carrying a cross in occupied East Jerusalem this week, an act of religious hatred igniting a scandal in Israel and beyond. Other videos, also widely seen on social media, show Jews spitting toward nuns outside a church. And yet another where Jews spit at a church doorway. Israeli police say they have arrested 5 people, one a minor, in the latest incident.
שר לביטחון לאומי איתמר בן גביר עוד לא הגיב על האירוע הזה. אם אולי עוזרת להבין למה.
דובי, קודם כל יש מנהג יהודי קדום, שכשעוברים ליד מנזר או ליד כומר יורקים. אפשר להסכים או לא להסכים, אבל כאשר יורקים לצד, אני לא חושב שזה מבטא.
יש גם מנהג יהודי, כל מנהג יהודי קדום אנחנו חייבים לקיים, תגיד?
לא, זה לא העניין. זה לא העניין. העניין הוא למה להפוך את זה לעניין פלילי.
Make it make sense. Evangelicals in America number approximately 80 million and make up about a quarter of US voters. They're hardly a majority, but it's obvious to me, and hopefully it is to you, that they're influencing American foreign policy. And that's a big problem. So what can you do about it? Well, first, if you are an evangelical, take a beat and reassess your values. Do you really think the carnage in Gaza is God's will? Second, share this video. Spread the message. Third, I've created a petition to investigate CUFI and similar Christian Zionist organizations. It's in the description box below. And once we reach 100,000 signatures, I'll send it to the DOJ FARA unit myself. You believe in Armageddon? That's cool. You want Armageddon? That's weird. But when you want to create US policy to create Armageddon, that's enough. See you on the next vid.